Good evening, everyone. Welcome to State of the Snowpack. For those of you at the back that are just coming in, come on in, grab yourself a beverage. And we do have some more seats up close here if you'd like to make your way up front. But it is the beginning of State of the Snowpack here in Whistler. We have a QR code up on the screen. Please use your phone to scan the QR code and buy raffle tickets. We are a nonprofit society, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but we require donations, and we have some great prizes to give away today. So feel free to use your smartphone and get yourself some raffle tickets. We will sell them at the intermission as well, and then we'll have to cut them off. If you're live streaming for us, I'm sorry, we can't buy the raffle tickets if we're live streaming. However, we can go to State of the Snowpack and make a donation. So that is a good thing. My name's Richard Wine. I'm going to be your host or your MC tonight. I have a bit of a background here in Whistler. I've been here for a really long time as part of the Whistler Blackcountry Patrol. Most of that time, I've had several Avalanche rescue dogs that I've worked with in the mountains, as well as for about 30 years, I was the person responsible for our public education Avalanche education program, which was good fun. And I'm just going to go State of the Snowpack is today. And we, of course, would like to start with an acknowledgement to the Squamish and Lillooet Nations peoples whose unceded territory we are on tonight. And although Whistler Mountain's 60 years old, the Lillooet and Squamish Nations people have been here a lot longer. And we want to make sure that we continue to be very respectful to the land that we're on. So we appreciate that. This is a disclaimer that I'm going to read straight up for you because those are what I'm told to do, and I'm very compliant and always do what I'm told. The information that we present are our own observations to the best of our ability. This presentation does not replace actual avalanche training. Sign up to an avalanche skills training or Canadian Avalanche Association course this winter. What you do with the information we present is your responsibility. Use it responsibly. And if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to ask. This is an information session, part of the State of the Snowpack. This is not a course. For those of you that have just come in, we have lots of seats up front here. Grab a beverage and come on in. You scan the QR code by the raffle prizes there, and we'll continue on. What is State of the Snowpack? There are community conversations, and one of the things that's so great about this, it's the ability in each individual location for experts in the field and people that are professionals working with the snow. Yeah, come on up. Feel free. We're casual here. Have the ability to interact with other people. So it's a sharing of information, and that's what it's supposed to be. So as we go along through the evening, think of questions, and this is an opportunity to ask questions to the people that we're with. Our mission is pretty simple. We want to decrease backcountry avalanche incidents, casualties, and rescues. And we do this by sharing information. And information allows us to make some better decisions. We also want to be able to bring people together, and the professionals and everyone else. And of course, we need to just get this information out from the forecasting communities. Now, State of the Snowpack is really local, and it's a really interesting thing wherever you go, whether you're in Jasper or Fernie or here in Whistler or Revy. It's the local information. So we have a great evening tonight, and we've got Jeff and Phil, and they're going to talk about the State of the Snowpack right here. The past month, whether you're in Europe, so Switzerland, or Italy or France, or if you're in California or Alberta, Utah, there have been a lot of avalanche incidents that have affected people. And our hearts really go out to those that have had some sort of poor outcome. And we've also had some stories of people that have gotten really lucky, and there have been some good outcomes in that time. And even though it's something that we'd love to go on and talk about how incredible the past month has been everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, we're not going to. This is State of the Snowpack, so we're going to stay right here in our own backyard. But there's obviously been lots going on in that time as well. How do we have a nonprofit society and have the ability to put these things on at no cost? Well, we do that from support and the support of our sponsors and your support. So if nobody was interested in live streaming and if nobody was interested in coming here and filling this room up like this, we wouldn't be able to continue on. So we ask that you really think about it and support our sponsors. And these are some of our bigger sponsors: Helicat Canada, Arc'teryx, Polaris Snowmobiles and Klim, Whistler Heli Skiing, and of course we're in this great community space at EVO. And EVO's, they're the people saying, hey, come use our space, come hang out in our store, right? They're open as a community space for people to come, and if you're heading out in the backcountry, you can do your trip planning here and use this space. Also tonight, specifically, our sponsors like Patagonia, SOTS, Granite, Oyuki, POC, Mammut, and the Whistler Mountain Bike Park have provided great prizes for you all to get in your raffles. Please visit the website to learn more at stateofthesnowpack.com. I could blah for hours on that, but you want to listen to Jeff and Phil, so I'm gonna get moving along. There is a position open, so come join State of the Snowpack. We're looking for an intern to write some grants and get some fundraising for the nonprofit society. It pays up $18 to $24 an hour, up to about 20 hours a week from April, May-ish to the middle of September. So if you're interested in it, please go to State of the Snowpack and look at it. We're looking for, a talented person to come and write some grant proposals and get some cash flow into State of the Snowpack. And of course, protect our winters. Michael's at the back. Pal, if I could leave you with anything, if you haven't already joined Protect Our Winters, everybody here is pretty like-minded. Go talk to Michael at the intermission or after we're all done and sign up, or you can buy some merch or whatever. But Protect Our Winters is a closely aligned nonprofit society with State of the Snowpack. I'm going to introduce Jeff to begin with, and then Phil's going to come in after the intermission. Jeff, I could go on and on talking about how knowledgeable he is and how great he is as a guide. He's also responsible for keeping some highways open here with the Ministry of Transportation, and he's on the Pemberton Search and Rescue. But I'm not going to get into what Jeff's going to talk about. I'm going to let him do that. And Jeff, why don't you come up here and people listen to you instead of me? All right, Jeff VanDriel, everyone.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for that intro and hard act to follow. It's great to see so many keen backcountry travelers here tonight. That's super awesome. Once again, I'm Jeff, and I manage the Avalanche program for highways up on the Duffey. Just a little bit about me. I started my guiding career back in 2007. Worked for most operations here on the coast and a few around BC. And 10 years ago, started working with the Ministry of Transportation, forecasting for the Duffey and Road 40. And joined Pemberton Search and Rescue a long time ago. Just wanted to start with a little bit of a video, get everybody psyched, and show you guys a little bit of the fun stuff that we do at work. So just a little bit about the Highways program. It is a provincial program. I manage the program out of Pemberton, South Coachouton. And we've got 8 different programs around the province. And you can see there, they all have their own little avalanche areas. And the program really got started after an accident just west of Terrace on Highway 16 at the North Route Cafe. There was a big storm, and there's some travelers couldn't make their way through the highway, so they took shelter at a local cafe. And unfortunately, that cafe got hit by an avalanche, and 7 people lost their lives that day. And it was decided they would start a task force to start managing avalanche hazard on BC's highways. So the program's been around for a while now. This is the area that we manage primarily. You can see here quite easily the Duffey. We also, primary area is Road 40 from Lillooet to Braylorne, the High Line along Anderson Lake, and a little bit of Marble Canyon and Highway 12 heading down to Lytton. Some of the other things that we do when we're not in the snow, we'll be training our maintenance contractors in avalanche rescue and safety. We will be building infrastructure and protection structures for avalanches. So in here we're building a short stopping wall, prevent small avalanches from hitting the road. Some of our paths are gullied, and so we will put lock block walls, catchments up the gully. We have to use some specialized equipment here. We got a spider hoe there, pretty neat piece of equipment. We do some maintenance for our access and egress routes. So that if we find ourselves in a low snowpack winter, down low like this year, we can still access and get out of our zones even with low snow. We install avalanche barrier gates or road closure gates. We'll maintain and build some of our remote avalanche control structures. We've got a vast network of radio repeaters, so we'll have to go and derime those. And we maintain and build our weather stations. So here's just a screenshot of the Avalanche Canada forecast map. And you can see all those black icons there. Those are all of our, the Ministry of Transportation's weather stations. So that's all public information. You can access them there. The area that we're going to be kind of focusing on is this zone here. And my primary area of focus is right around here. So that's this zone. And then the area we're going to be talking about mostly tonight is just this little zone right here around the Duffey Lake. So when you're reading the Avalanche Canada bulletins, they've got such a massive area for them to forecast. And so they can be a little bit more vague. And I totally get that, because even looking at this zone, I've got kind of 3 different microclimates I'm looking at. But the main one particularly, everything west of Duffey Lake gets a lot more snow and everything east of Duffey Lake. Does anybody recognize this piece of terrain? This is Blowdown Peak up on the Duffey. A lot of people would recognize this as Melissa's, as it's labeled on the Baldwin map. This is Path 52. Path 51 is here. And that's the one with the Gazex in it. This is Path 52, has 2 start zones, and they both head into the same track there. We denote this 52 north and 52 south. And this little rib right here, that's Melissa's. And that's kind of, in general, a little bit safer, more sheltered skiing. We spend a lot of time in this area. We've got a weather station just out of frame here, a weather station at the peak, and obviously our Gazex infrastructure. So this is just another view of it here. This is from 2 years ago. I don't know if you guys can make out the crown line here. It's not unprecedented, but I haven't seen it in 10 years. It goes all the way and connects both start zones all in one shot. This shot actually remoted this little feature right here as well as the backside of the ridge and the backside of Blowdown Peak. So that was a pretty impressive cycle. Last year, we were avoiding skiing Path 52. That's kind of a trade work run for us. And we had a layer of facets that we were quite concerned about. And it really pains me to not go ski fresh snow. But we kept off of it. And a few weeks later, we did an avalanche control mission. And this is the result. You can see Melissa's there, and then 52 south. And we throw a shot kind of right on the edge of Melissa's and 52 south there. So again, really impressive propagation. And that definitely, for us, confirmed our choice not to ski that for a few weeks. And yeah, so there's a reason why there's a lot of tiny trees down there. We just get a quick glimpse of the event there at the top. All right, so let's get into it. Current state of the snowpack. Well, if we have a look at past years, the shaded area there is past year's max and min snowpack. And this is at Blowdown Mid weather station, just the one that I said was just out of frame in that last photo. And this is giving us precip amounts, and on the right is snowfall amounts. And as you guys probably well know, we're well below average. And except for December. December was record setting. But the rest of the season has been below average, and especially below tree line. This is a graph of the weather that's happened since the last state of the snowpack, February 10th. So just coming out of a warm period, a bit of a dry period, and things cooled. We got some new snow, and that's what's buried the February 7th crust, and that's one of the crusts I'll be talking about tonight. We got a bit more on that, just a bit of incremental loading as it cooled down, and then started to warm up a bit, and we got a pretty decent snowfall for this year on the Duffey. We only recorded 35 centimeters of storm snow, but with winds, that was enough to create a bit of an avalanche problem. We did control on the 23rd, and for this kind of event, we got pretty lackluster results. Loose dry to size 2. We usually expect a bit more out of that, but that felt like a positive thing for that. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later in the presentation. Since then, a bit more incremental loading. We had a pretty good warm-up on March 7th with some rain. and it got buried again with a cool down, so now we have also the March 7th crust. So yeah, as you can see, just spoke of the March 7th crust. The Feb 7th crust has some facets associated with it. We also have the January 28th crust, the mid-December crust, and the mid-November crust. So there's a lot of crusts in the snowpack. Those bottom three right now are dormant as far as we're concerned, but we still have them on our radar as they could wake up for the spring cycle. So just something to keep in mind moving forward. This is a snow profile we dug yesterday, and on the left there is a pretty traditional snow profile graph if you haven't seen one before. Basically we dig into the snow, poke around it a little bit, make some measurements, and this is what we come up with. Basically the further you go to the right here, the more stiff or resistant that layer of snow is. And anytime that we have a more cohesive layer over a less cohesive layer is generally when we have a problem. So just some things to point out here. Here we have the newly formed March 7th crust, just under about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow. And then down here we have the February 7th crust. It looks a little bit different than that. It's basically a crust on both ends with some facets and melt mix forms. It's kind of call it a melt freeze or like a crust complex. It's a little bit of a mess. And it seems to be healing a little bit, but we're starting to get some facets forming just above. And so here we got an extended column test, 26, and this is just above the February 7th crust on facets, so we're about half a mil to a mil. This is, oh, and I should just mention that this is our study plot at blowdown, so it's about just over 1,900 meters on a northwest aspect. And then on the right here, we're kind of playing around with a new tool for us. It's a digital probe that has a pressure sensor on the end, essentially. And so all we have to do is just stick it down in the snow and it'll graph this out for us. And it kind of provides a little more nuanced information on the snowpack. So just for reference, this manual pit here goes to about this zone right here because this one went to ground. And so you can see it mirrors this somewhat. You can see here we have the newly formed March 7th crust, and then here we have the February 7th crust with the facets in between. Pardon me. So yeah, we've just been playing around with that, trying to see how it correlates to our manual observations, and we found it to be a pretty decent tool so far. So this is our latest snowpack summary for the Duffey that we put out yesterday. So we've got about 12 centimeters of storm snow, which is the equivalent in this storm was 16 millimeters of water equivalent. And that just gives us a little better idea. That's a more consistent way to measure load. And it's been variably distributed by strong northerly winds overlying the March 7th rain crust, which is about 1 to 2 centimeters thick. And we observed that crust up to at least 2,200 meters. We didn't go higher than that. And the rain crust is variably exposed on windward aspects above 1,950 meters, or depending on where you are, if it's exposed to the wind. Just the zone that we were at, that's where we start to see a little bit more wind effect. Our February 7th crust facets combination is down 50 to 90 centimeters and a well-settled snowpack below. Now, just one thing to keep in mind, you know, I said that with that one storm, we got 35 centimeters. That's on the eastern end of the Duffey, so, you know, the Joffrey zone, Cayush, that'll get a fair amount more. And so this is based off of a more easterly, drier snowpack on the Duffey. So just going over the Avalanche Canada danger ratings, these were put out yesterday afternoon. I didn't get a chance this afternoon to give the update for today, but they're basically calling it moderate, moderate, low. So moderate in the alpine, moderate tree line, moderate below tree line, and low below tree line. So just as a reminder, as a moderate, that's heightened avalanche conditions on specific terrain features. Evaluate the terrain and snow carefully and identify features of concern. Natural avalanches are unlikely. Human-triggered avalanches are possible. and small avalanches in specific terrain or large avalanches in isolated terrain. So they'll break down the avalanche problems. So first problem they're talking about is the wind slab. And these are at alpine and tree line elevations on all aspects in possible likelihood and size 1 to 2. So they've got strong variable winds over the weekends, produce widespread wind slabs, which may remain reactive in steep exposed terrain. So continued snowfall in some areas and elevated winds could create fresh slabs throughout the day. The next one is persistent slab. Again, alpine tree line, here more on the northerly to east quadrants, unlikely to possible, size 1.5 to size 3. Several persistent weak layers of surface ore, facets, or crusts may be buried in the top meter of the snowpack. Wind slabs could step down to these layers, causing larger than expected avalanches. So again, a little bit vague. I know a number of the operations are talking about a few different layers depending on where they are. We haven't seen a surface ore problem where we've observed on the Duffey, but I know on the Hurley, backcountry snowcats, they've been talking about a surface ore problem. Terrain and travel advice. Reactive wind slabs may persist on isolated slopes, or isolated steep exposed slopes. Assess your local conditions. As new snow accumulates, slabs may become more widespread. So wind slabs most reactive during their formation. Be careful with wind-loaded pockets, especially near ridge crests and rollovers. Use extra caution around cornices. They are large, fragile, and can trigger slabs on slopes below. And beware of the potential for large avalanches due to buried weak layers. So just going to go through the avalanche summary here, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the avalanches that have happened since the last state of the snowpack. So on Sunday, numerous wind slab avalanches up to size 2 occurred in exposed terrain across various aspects, along with a few cornice failures. On Monday, riders triggered what they suspect was a large wind slab near Braylorn. And the current cooler temperatures should decrease the reactivity of wind slabs formed over the weekend. However, new snow in areas and wind could form fresh slabs at the surface. And for the snowpack summary, you'll see it's a little bit more vague version of the kind of focused one that we did, but again, they're forecasting for such a large area. So roughly 5 to 15 centimeters of recent storm snow has fallen. It's been affected by strong variable winds and exposed terrain. A widespread crust, so that's the March 7th, below 2,200 meters from last weekend's rain event, exists just below the snow or at the surface. At higher elevations, the new snow sits atop generally a well-settled, well-consolidated upper snowpack. Variable weak layers buried throughout February may persist roughly 30 to 100 centimeters below the surface in northerly high elevation terrain. These layers consist of surface ore, facets, and or crusts. The remaining snowpack appears to be strong and well bonded. Now, unfortunately for all of you, David Jones, and for me, David Jones isn't here tonight, so I'm going to do my best to do a little weather forecasting here. I won't do it any justice compared to him, but just to start with what Avalanche Canada has put out. So for today, they called for mostly cloudy, 4 to 10 centimeters of snow with 50-kilometer-hour southwest ridgetop winds, and temperatures minus 12. So yeah, you can see their temperatures are nice and cool, slowly warming here throughout the week. Calling for incremental loading throughout the week, and winds that are really conducive to transporting snow and creating wind slabs. So it's not a big obvious storm, but definitely there's going to be an increase in localized instabilities. So for the synopsis, just off the Gulf of the Alaskan Panhandle, we've got a weak upper trough, and just kind of producing unsettled convective conditions over the coast here. And the convective nature of the weather will lead to high spatial variability in cloud cover and precipitation amounts. So that's a real key thing to keep in mind for the spring. This is a forecast this is a GEM forecast, GEM regional. And this is kind of what we're looking at. It's not a lot to look at. And just remember, these are lower numbers than we might experience here. So that's a little more encouraging. Most of the forecasts do look like this. Again, a bit of incremental loading over the next couple of days with some winds, followed by kind of a little more stable weather and lower winds. There is one outlier forecast, the icon, and that's suggesting that tomorrow night we might get a bunch more snow. So we'll see what comes of that. And that's what I got for you for weather forecast. I don't really trust a forecast more than 2 days out, and beyond that is just trends. Avalanche Canada also puts out a confidence, which is a really nice thing, just so we have an idea of the confidence level of the forecasters. So they just bumped from moderate to high. The reason for that is the snowpack structure is well understood. However, with the caveat that they're confident that there are persistent slabs in the snowpack, just uncertain about how likely they are to trigger, which that's always seems to be the case. So I just want to talk about some avalanche events that have been reported, and this is from the Mountain Information Network, and I encourage everybody, if you're out there, please submit your findings, no matter what level of experiences you have. If you feel nervous about it or anything, the more information we can get, the better. So really appreciate it. And while I'm speaking about these, if anybody was one of the parties that posted these, then by all means add some information and flavor. So this group was going to ski Heartstrings on the Duffey, really popular feature, great feature to ski. And they did an extended column test at the top of Heartstrings, and they got a planar failure after 2 taps from the elbow, so moderate, but it kind of popped out with some energy. It's 30 centimeters of wind-load snow over a 2 centimeter layer of sugary snow, so facets. So I just want to highlight here that they made a pretty good call here. They actually turned around and skied back out the way they came. However, they did come across a loose, wet size 1 avalanche that had come across their skin track. So more evidence that they probably made a good choice. So yeah, this happened on Sunday. This is while the March 7th was being created / buried. And size 1, loose, wet, natural on an east aspect of tree line. The next day, this is Cayush Mountain, and that's at about 2,400 meters there. And someone decided, so they had skinned into the col there, and then they decided to ski kind of close to the rocks there and popped out a little slab. So again, just a small slab, 1.5. It's about 20 centimeters deep and 30 meters wide. Ran for about 200 meters, and a southeast aspect in the Alpine, 2,400 meters, steep terrain, and that was, oh, sorry, that also was on Sunday. Oh no, that was the burial date, there we go. So, and then this is the one they were just mentioning in the avalanche activity in the avalanche forecast there. It's a group of 7 snowmobilers. They were out riding in the Braylorn backcountry on the Hurley, in an area known as the Books. And in the afternoon, while traversing a northwest-facing slope, one of the riders triggered a size 2.5. So that's a pretty decent avalanche to be involved in. Appeared to be a wind slab that released on an underlying crust layer, common weak layer interface that had been building in the area. The avalanche ran with enough force to catch one member of the group, carrying him downslope and burying him up to his neck in debris. Fortunately, the buried rider's head remained above the snow surface, and this outcome was likely due to his avalanche airbag, which he had deployed during the slide. The remaining 6 members of the group responded immediately, dug out their companion, and extracted his snowmobile from the debris. The buried rider sustained no injuries. The entire group exited the area without further incident. So they posted some photos. They're not amazing quality just due to the light and exposure, but they actually did catch a sequence of it. So, like I said, kind of hard to see, but here's the crown line here, and the slab's just initiating. There's the snowmobiler. So now it's kind of broken up a little bit and is caught up to the snowmobiler as he's riding down. And there you can just see the sledder there. So pretty significant event, but turned out in favor of the group for sure. So that was on March 9th. Slab thickness 3 meters. Didn't look like 3 meters in the photo. Run length was 300 meters. But yeah, it was a 2.5 persistent slab, wind slab triggered by a snowmobile, northwest aspect in the Alpine at 2,100 meters. As a lot of you may know, there was a fairly serious incident on the Duffey on February 24th. Not a good outcome on this one, and definitely just hope that we can learn from the events that happened here. And hindsight is often 20/20, not always the case, but hopefully we can just take some lessons from what happened here. So on the morning of February 24th, a lone snowboarder triggered a very large wind slab avalanche that initiated at Ridgetop near the Anniversary Glacier. A companion rescue was initiated by a witness, and the subject was located later in the afternoon by Permanent Search and Rescue, and unfortunately they did not survive. This call came in, we were just finishing a field day and just got back into cell service, and two of the members on our team were members of Permanent Search and Rescue, so we got the call as we came into cell service and headed to the base. There had already been a advanced team. A bunch of our members work on patrol, so they had flown out there already from Whistler. So we arrived, we were about the third machine. But yeah, as mentioned here, the report was single snowboarder. It was a party of two, but the one had stayed that morning at the hut, and then this individual had gone out solo. And around 10 o'clock, the witness saw there was an avalanche and went to go initiate a rescue. It was quite complex. Multiple deposit zones, so it was quite difficult to search all of that. And so without being able to find his buddy, he had to head out to the road to go and get help because they didn't have any communication devices. It was later found out that the two were actually riding together. And you know, when we look at something like this, you know, this was just after that storm cycle that I talked about on the 23rd. We had 35 centimeters on our storm board. So this is a little further west, so there's a little bit more on that end. And so we have another weather station on the roadside at Cayush. And so that one had the same amount of storm snow as our tree line weather station on the east end. So 35 centimeters of storm snow at 1,900 meters, the blowdown, 35 centimeters of snow roadside on the Cayush end. So up high in the mountains there's probably 50 plus storm snow along with wind transport can make for a pretty significant wind slab. So, oh yeah, that's what I wanted to pull up here. So, yeah, you can see again there we got a pretty significant amount of snow, and you know, we kind of look at something like this. I'll just get through this here. So it ended up being size 3.5, northeast aspects 2,400 meters. Crown depth average is 150 centimeters. Minimum crown depth was 50. And max of 200 centimeters, about 100 meters wide, ran for 1,500 meters. So when we look at a piece of terrain like this after a weather history like that, you kind of wonder why somebody would go do that alone. Again, it was found out that, in fact, that wasn't the case. They were riding together. However, some information came to light afterwards that, you know, maybe well, maybe this wasn't such a crazy decision, despite the event that happened. So they actually, during the storm, the day before, they had been on this piece of terrain and had done 3 laps on it with no consequence. So the next day, dawn's clear, winds have died down. You might think, yeah, you know, things have settled. We didn't get anything yesterday, like, let's go hit that again. The first rider skied down the first section and with no consequences, and called up to his buddy saying, "Yeah, give her." And the second rider was the one who triggered it. And unfortunately, the subject was just not in a safe spot. So the rider who triggered it actually ended up on the surface and was the one who performed the search, but couldn't pick up a signal. And it was the one who had ridden before that was buried. So you can see it's pretty serious terrain here. Obviously, this is the feature they came to ride, but the debris got all pushed over all these rocks and down into this morainal feature down at the bottom. And the subject was found right around there. He was found with a transceiver. We did have dogs on the scene, but he was found with a transceiver. Again, it was just such a massive area. The dogs were quite busy up here. They found some of the second rider who initiated the slab, some of his gear, so they were kind of focused on that. At that point, we understood that there was only one rider at the time. So, with accurate information right off the bat, in this situation, probably, wasn't going to be much of a help. But again, the better information that we get off the bat, the better it can be potentially for the subject involved. So there's just a foreshortened view there of the start zone and the crown line, sort of from the middle bench. And a shot from the helicopter of the line there. So really unfortunate accident. Never want anything like this to happen, but some key takeaways that we can take from this is just really ensure that where you're stopping to regroup is somewhere that is actually safe. This tragedy really could have been avoided if he would have been in a safe spot. Again, the second rider did trigger a big avalanche, but managed to get out of it and survive. So if the first rider had been in an actual safe spot, then this just would have been a learning experience. The other thing is be mindful of storm snow cohesion. So again, in order for us to get a slab avalanche, we need some sort of cohesion. We talk about wind slabs, we talk about storm slabs, we talk about persistent slabs, wet slabs. But one of the problems that isn't really on the list is a settlement slab. As the storm snow over time starts to settle, it becomes more cohesive, and it can form a slab just that way. And then the other one is carry communication devices. If you're at a cell service, have something other than your cell phone, a radio, or a satellite communication device, or an iPhone. That being said, does anybody have any recent information about any avalanche observations or occurrences that anybody's seen? All right, awesome. Well, for sure, if you do, please, as I mentioned before, submit them in. If you see something, say something. And if you're wondering whether you should post them in or not, just ask yourself, was there weather? Did you see any avalanches? Did you find out if the riding was good or not? And was there any signs of instability? And if you checked yes to any of those, we'd love to hear from you. So the takeaways from what I've spoken of tonight, the word of the day for right now in the snowpack is variability. And be mindful of snowpack differences between solar and polar aspects going into the spring. So solar being the ones exposed to sun, polar are usually the shaded aspects. Monitor the deeper crust layers as we get further into the spring, and maintain regional but especially slope scale assessments. So you may read an avalanche bulletin, but then make some observations when you're in the terrain, and make the call based on what you see there. And I'll just finish out my presentation with another gratuitous video of avalanches. This is a spring climax cycle, so this is in May. And we've dropped a shot there. This is a kind of a unique view in that we don't have the powder cloud obscuring the view of the mass of the avalanche. And you can see the little highway way down there, just waiting. And yeah, we buried the road on that one. That wasn't the only one that hit the road, but that was the biggest result of the day. And it put a record amount of snow on the road, 15 meters of snow on the highway with 180 meters length of highway buried. That was, the biggest avalanche deposit out of Path 51 in our records. Any questions?
That was 2 years ago?
That last one? Yeah. No, that was 10 years ago.
There's a question back there.
Answer?
Oh, right. Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you're not done yet. I got a question for you. All right, so here's my question. If we're skiing or riding in most ski areas, there's a tolerance for a level 1, a size 1 avalanche, and there's not a tolerance beyond that. And we know that anything greater than a size 1 can injure or bury an adult. But with highways, because people at the beginning or at the onset, most people are in their vehicles, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, your tolerance is size 2 avalanche. And but we see sometimes when people are on a place like the Duffey Lake Road, they get to, maybe there's a slide across the road, and they get out of their car, which now is a different tolerance. Can you speak to that and some of the challenges that you have with that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rich, for that question. Yeah, so we do have an operational wristband that allows us to keep a road open despite the chance of size 2s hitting the road. And the reason for that is that we expect that our highway travelers are traveling in vehicles and they are moving. So that reduces their exposure. However, if you ever do come across something on the road, it's human nature. People stop and they get out, and that increases your vulnerability tenfold. So that's not what we forecast for. We're not forecasting for people walking on the roads, for people being out of their vehicles. And so that's why as you're traveling in avalanche areas on the highways, you may see avalanche area, no stopping. And that's the reason for that. So if you do ever come across obstacle on the road, whether it's an avalanche on the road or a landslide on the road, you're gonna have to stop. But I don't recommend getting out of your vehicle, and I recommend kind of getting out of that immediate vicinity and finding yourself a sheltered spot to stop and wait, or just go back the way you came until we can get the road opened.
Great, thanks a lot. Anybody else? Any questions for Jeff? No, if there's no more questions, let's give it up for Ministry of Transport Highways, Jeff VanDriel. And we will take a short 10-minute intermission so you can get a beverage, buy a raffle ticket. Sorry for those of you that are streaming online. You can't buy a raffle ticket, but you can make a donation to State of the Snowpack. So take 10 minutes. Thanks, everybody. All right, we're going to get going here on the second part of our program for this evening. Once again, for those of you, my name's Richard Wine. I'm your host this evening, and I want to thank you for coming out to State of the Snowpack Whistler edition. Hey, can I ask? This is the third or this is the fourth event we've put on this winter. Has anybody been to all four? Is this the fourth one for anybody? Couple at the back, up front. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for showing your support and continuing to show up for these. We really appreciate it. Once again, it's not just about getting donations and things. We need you to be interested and come and please pass the word on to your friends. We would like to get going, and I'm going to introduce Phil. Phil is a member of Squamish Search and Rescue. Phil's also a Reco instructor. So the little Reco tabs in your clothing, teaching people how to use that tool, which is a very good tool. And of course, Phil's a member of the Whistler Blackcomb Ski Patrol. So Phil, come on up and let's get rolling.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's a very loud contingent in the back there of the Whistler Blackcomb Ski Patrollers. So thank you very much for showing up, guys. I'm going to step back, and girls. Oh, apologies. I'm going to step back one to this one right here. I've bought raffle tickets every time I've come, and I've won a prize every time I've come. I don't think the system is rigged in my favor. I think that not enough people are buying raffle tickets. So far, I've won socks, I've won an Epic Pass, and I won an airbag. These prizes are dope. So I'm going to leave this up for another 10 seconds. Get your phone ups, buy one. If you get the $25 for 10 tickets, it increases your chances. And if you don't win anything, the money is still going to a good cause, helping us out here with this community. All right. My topic for today is going to be on the warming snowpack. Since this is the last state of the snowpack, I figured we still have a lot of winter ahead of us. Let's talk about what we are expecting to have come up. So for just the breakdown of it, what can be expected from this talk? I'm going to go through some pretty rough science on what is happening with the spring snowpack. I'm going to talk about a couple of case studies that I was involved with, either as a rescuer or personally involved with, that happened in springtime conditions. And I'm also going to talk about a good way to manage yourself in the springtime when the heat is on. And that really is the key in terms of the change of what's happening with our snowpack, is that we're getting a lot more of this guy as we come into the springtime. Just a lot more sun, and I mean a lot more sun. To give you guys a little bit of an example, if we take a look at what the sun is doing on the winter solstice, so this year that was December 21st, 2025, we're only really getting 8 hours and 4 minutes of sunshine. That sun is rising in the southeast, setting in the southwest, and it's only rising to an incline of about 17 degrees across the horizon line. That's really not giving us a whole lot of sunshine. If we jump to today, a bit of a different story. We're getting 11 hours and 33 minutes of sunshine today, or we had. The height of the sun was at 36 degrees at 1:21. Thank you very much, daylight savings time. And it was rising basically directly due east, so if south is looking down the audience, right off my left shoulder is where it rose, and then it set basically due west. If we step this forward into later spring, we're looking at the same thing on May 1st. We're now looking at 14 hours of sunshine, 14 hours, 44 minutes. That's 82% more sunshine. And more importantly, that sun is rising to a height of 55 degrees above the horizon line. And that's really what's bringing our solar intensity that's going to start changing our snowpack. As the sun gets higher in the sky, the energy that comes off of it is concentrated into a smaller area. So whatever sun we are getting has more punch. As you can see in the diagram to the right, spread out over a larger area when it's coming in at a more acute angle. Then when it's coming in from over top, it's more concentrated. This has a big effect on our snowpack. Now, the energy balance in our snowpack, I said rough science, so we're going to cut it down here a little bit. The energy balance in our snowpack is governed by this equation. Does anyone know what it is? Good, we're going to cut it apart. We're not going to care about ground flux because that's not part of our solar. And we're not going to talk too much about latent heat, even though it's really important, because that's going to take us on a bit of a wild ride. So we're going to care about three things, and these are three things that we can see and we can feel. We're going to care about our radiation balance. So that is the radiation that's coming into and out of our snowpack. We're going to care about sensible heat, which we can roughly correlate to air temperature. And we're going to care about what's called an advective heat flux, which we'll forget those words. We're just going to call it rain. In the springtime, with more sun, we got more radiation. With more radiation, we got warmer air. And with warmer air, we have a higher likelihood of rain. Just many, many inputs of heat into our snowpack. Now, high school science here. Shortwave radiation comes from the sun. We get a whole bunch of it, super punchy. When it hits our snowpack, about 90% of that sunshine is reflected away with a fresh snowpack. If we're looking at something that's a little bit more mature, or something like, say, for example, a diurnal melt freeze crust, which we'll find in the springtime, that's going to drop to more like 80, 70, 60%. Anything that's not reflected away gets absorbed into the snowpack, and it can penetrate to a depth of up to 30 centimeters. Most of it goes to the top 10. You can see how quickly that the sunshine can change a snowpack at depth. For those of us that are practitioners and that dig snow pits, that 10 to 30 centimeters is the reason why you put that shovel blade on the corner of your snow pit. All right? Now also, our snowpack is kicking out long-wave radiation. Well, long-wave radiation is infrared. It's earthly radiation. Everything on the Earth gives out some form of infrared radiation, including our snowpack. If there's nothing over top of that long-wave radiation, like a cloud layer, it goes up into space, runs away free, creates a cooling effect on our snowpack. If we do have a cloud layer, that cloud layer creates a bit of a heat trap. And calling it a trap is a little bit insincere. The long-wave radiation is still coming out of our snowpack, but that cloud layer is also reflecting its own long-wave radiation back. When that's happening, it creates something that looks like a trap, and we get much less cooling on the surface of our snowpack. And of course, clouds are reflective, and they reflect away the sun, so that stops other heating sources. When we get into nighttime, we get rid of that shortwave radiation. We're just stuck with the long wave. And when the clouds are there, it's a slow cooling process of the snowpack. If we have a clear sky, that long wave radiation runs away to space, and we get that quick cooling process of the snowpack. For anybody that's skiing out later in the day off the hill right now, you'll notice that when you get to the lower ski runs and the sun comes off it, that nice slushy snow all of a sudden turns really icy really fast. That's the long wave radiation flux. All of this is happening pretty much all the time. But to top it off, we also have our air temperature. So air temperature is a convective activity to move the air, and it's a conductive activity to transmit energy into the snowpack. It's a much slower process than the radiation process, but the other difference is that if air temperature is warm and stays warm day and night, it's one that's always happening. It's pushing that energy deeper and deeper into our snowpack, potentially causing melting. And then finally, the last one is rain. This is one of the quickest ways for us to heat up our snowpack because rain, naturally, is warmer than snow because it's melted. So that rain hits the snowpack, starts to percolate down, and we're delivering energy deep into the snowpack super fast. That's kind of done for the boring science. What does this mean for the snowpack in general? When we start seeing warming in the springtime, on the snow surface, the strong solar inputs and the above freezing air temps start to melt the upper snowpack. We can see this especially, sorry, I'm getting a feedback here. We can see this especially on solar aspects with the sun and that deep penetration of the shortwave radiation into the snowpack. That is obviously dependent on which aspects are facing the sun and the incline of that slope. Now, that solar can rapidly change that upper snowpack. For anybody that's done any spring skiing when it's kind of cloudy in the morning, you get a nice, loose, dry, fresh snowfall. And the moment the sun hits it, you can wait maybe 5-10 minutes, and that 30 centimeters of snow is now just moist, and it's puggy, and it feels like it's slabbing together. That's that solar radiation kicking in super fast. Once we get enough heating and enough melting, and we get enough water in the snowpack, about 7% water, we completely lose the cohesion between the grains of the snowpack, and it just starts to fall apart. That's that loose wet problem that we see popping up, and we can see it evident here in the photo that I have set up. On a flip side, if that free water doesn't saturate that upper snowpack, runs down to a layer down low, and starts to run across an impervious layer down low, we now have a lack of bonding between the upper layer and the lower layer. That creates our wet slab activity. Everyone on board so far? Excellent. Yes?
The last point, does it happen at the same time?
It can. It has more to do with the grain form of the top layer of snow.
Okay.
What ends up happening for wet slab activity is that it's kind of a funny thing. It's a process. Stay with me now, patrollers. It's a process called fingering, where water that's in the upper snowpack takes preferential channels through, so it doesn't actually saturate. It runs through like rivers to an impervious layer and then spreads out across that layer. And so it can happen at the same time, but if one is more prevalent than the other, then it dominates. Now for a deeper snowpack, if any of these processes go on for a long time, you can obviously see that the heat from up top starts to seep in lower and lower, as does the meltwater. Once we get meltwater penetration through the snowpack to deeper layers, such as PWLs that we have previously buried, Jeff talked about those, 1 per month, nice and clean organization, we can see those layers start to wake up. So they lose their dormancy, they start to become triggerable and reactive again. These previously dormant layers become very hard to predict in terms of timing because we're not having an obvious sign on the surface of what's happening below. And the only thing that we really know is that once we get an excessive amount of warming for a long period of time, we should start to be very wary of these layers waking up. If you take a look at this photo here, this is actually one of my favorite photos. Can you see this line right here? This is a photo that I took on a trip this past spring that I'll get to dig into a little bit later. If we zoom in on that, can you see that crown line? That thing is monstrous. So I was looking at it for a while. I estimate it's probably about 5 meters tall at the tallest point. And you can see this bed surface underneath it here is all ripped to rocks. This was after a good long period of heating. This is a full depth persistent slab break up high on the mountain, and it produced this avalanche debris. So if you look at this picture, this person over here is actually 2 people stacked on top of each other, and I estimate that this is probably about 30 feet deep at the deepest point. I'm glad it happened before we got there and not while we were there. And then finally, to talk about the rain, rain events are a massive input of heat into the snowpack, especially when we have large rain events. This photo here was provided by Bryce, the person that talked for us last month for State of the Snowpack. And this photo was taken up in the Brandywine, and you can see this all ran with the rain event in January. Not something we really want to see in January, but it is something that happened. All that rain percolated down through the snowpack, rapidly weakening the bonds. And one thing to keep in mind with rain, if you're going out and you're thinking about rain, rain is a widespread event. It doesn't happen preferentially on one aspect or another aspect. So if you have widespread big rainstorm, you're going to have a widespread natural avalanche cycle. Now, the creepy thing with wet snow is that it doesn't necessarily go when we want it to. It's going to trigger when it's ready. So when we have a dry snow problem, the most common way these dry snow problems trigger is with an overloading. So whether it's that extra snow loading through a storm, whether that's by skier trigger, ski cut, or accidental, or by the use of explosives. And the stratigraphy, which is the layers inside the snowpack, are relatively static. They're not evolving that quickly, and we know where the problems are, and the problems are going to stay there. The problem with the wet snow trigger is that the wet problems become more triggerable with changes within the snowpack. So as it starts to warm up, as that water percolates down to the lower layers, things start changing, and we can't keep track of it on the surface. This means that if we want something to go, we often need a very large trigger. That's why MOT uses AMFO bags a ton in the springtime. And anything that's smaller than that doesn't really give us the reliability to know that a slope has been adequately triggered. For us at the ski resort, if we start dealing with a sudden warming and a wet slab problem, we're less likely to try to bomb the crap out of it. We're more likely to just shut it down and pull back because we just can't predict it. Something that is completely untriggerable in the morning can become reactive by the afternoon. Now, to carry this forward, I have a couple of case studies that I want to talk about. This is one that I was involved in as a rescuer. This is the Tantalus rescue. This happened in May of 2021. And if you guys are familiar with this, if you haven't stopped at the side of the highway on the way to Whistler, well, you've probably seen it from your car. This is the Tantalus Range. And this area right here is the Rumbling Glacier. So the place that this rescue occurred was right about there. If you've seen this with no snow, you know how broken and really sketchy the Rumbling Glacier looks, so this isn't a really fun place to hang out for a long period of time. Now, the 3 people I'm talking about have since become friends since we did this rescue for them. Set out from Sigurd Creek at 10 p.m. on the night before. So they were going for a single push of the Tantalus Range Traverse. It's about 40 kilometers long. It's about 3,500 meters of elevation gain. It's a big day. And they decided that they wanted to try to complete most of it at night. Pretty good idea. They also knew that they had a pretty good weather window the next morning. Clear conditions all day, freezing level staying relatively low, about 1,600 meters. And the big crossing area is the Rumbling Glacier. They got there at 8 o'clock, which is about 2 hours later than they figured, but they were looking at some pretty good conditions. Just as a heads up, the Rumbling Glacier is an east-northeast facing glacier, so with sunrise in the morning, it starts to see immediate sunshine, and they're crossing at about 1,800 to 2,000 meters, so above that forecast freezing level. If you take a look at this photo here, this is at the shoulder starting into the Rumbling Glacier. That's looking pretty promising as far as conditions are concerned for the springtime. It's a soft, fresh snowpack, a thin layer sitting over top of a hard frozen melt freeze crust. These three people were looking at it, setting off across the glacier, and they were feeling pretty confident about their choice to take off across. The snow only really started softening up an hour before this incident occurred. As they're crossing right across the middle, a small chunk of slab broke off the upper head wall, triggered a wet slab below them, and slowly started sliding downhill. They were in the way of this slab, but it was moving very slowly, and so they kind of noticed it and went, oh, let's get out of the way, and did a slow walk off to the side. And as it passed them by, they regrouped, started having conversation. Okay, this is something we didn't really want to see. What is our plan from here? As that conversation was happening, this chunk of slab broke off the same spot and hit the glacier as well. Probably about 2 meters thick, probably about 30 meters long, was covering that rocks, and the whole thing went at once. Once it hit, it started bowling towards them at high speed, and they had to run sideways out of the path of this very large wet slab avalanche that had occurred. The last person in the line felt the avalanche wash over the tails of his skis as he got out of its path. It's a very close call. After having 2 quick succession avalanches and looking around, seeing how much headwall was above them and seeing the predicament that they were in, they decided that they were in over their head, and they gave Squamish Search and Rescue a call. Pretty good idea. They ended up skiing down and finding a spot a little bit lower on the glacier, away from the headwall, that's felt like a relative island of safety. And you can see what I mean by relative, because if you look at what's above them, just give you an idea. That's the helicopter going in to rescue them. If you look at what's above them, that's a whole lot of hang fire, that's a whole lot of head wall, and that has been baking in the sun for about 4 to 5 hours at this point. Not an awesome place to hang out. We used 2 helicopters in this rescue because we were worried about our own safety as well. One, which you can see in that photo, was the one that I was in to go pick them up, and the second one was the one that was taking this picture, and it was acting as an overwatch to make sure that as we were flying in, nothing was coming off the upper head wall. We managed a quick pick of the subjects, quick into the big helicopter, and we flew them back to safety in the valley. Just as a point of reference, that square that I had pulled up in the last slide is that one right there. And you can see the avalanche edge right here. So it's probably about 25 or 30 meters wide. And when it triggered, they were standing right here, right in the guts of it. To zoom out a little bit to see how lucky they were not to get caught in this, the red outline on the left here is the full size of the avalanche. The little X is where we picked them up. And on this photo here on the right-hand side, you can see just how big that debris field was. Absolutely trenching. If you got caught up in that avalanche, you weren't making it out. So I'm pretty happy they did. And like I said, they're good friends of mine now, and it was really nice to have this conversation with them to see where they landed on this after experiencing something like this. Now for the second case study, this one's a little bit more vulnerable for me. Lots of patrollers in the back, they sure appreciate my vulnerability. Anyone know what this line is? Super cool R. Oh my God. If anybody hasn't seen this, it is the coolest line. It's off of Spire Peak, just northwest of the Mamquam Mountain Garibaldi National Park. It's quite a hike to get to. It's about a 2-day adventure, unless you want to push it in one day, which is about a 24-hour round trip to the car. Total run, 1.2 kilometers long. Total elevation loft, 780 meters. A perfect skiable 32.5 degrees. Excellent. Perfect for avalanches as well, but perfect for skiing, so you really got to play your cards on that one. Just for clarity here, we're not looking at this line. That's not the line. That's a line called Camel Toe. I think I know of one person that skied that. We're looking at this line right here. Now, I made plans with a couple friends of mine, two of which are in the audience today. Like, I can't call her a friend. My fiance. Put your hand up. You! And then my buddy Kieran, who's also hiding in the back somewhere. Ooh, nothing at all. So myself, these two, and then a third friend of ours, Braden, who's not here tonight, we set out for this mission on mid-April in 2025, so just last year. We were all pretty stoked about it. We left from the Diamond Head parking lot in the afternoon. We camped at the Rampart Ponds in Garibaldi Park, which is where you're supposed to camp when you go camping in Garibaldi Park. So if you're going camping, please pay for your camping fees. The parks really need it. After we camped out there at this beautiful campsite, we got up the next morning, broke camp, and set out, heading across Mamquam Lake. Our goal was to come up the backside of Spire Peak and Pyramid Mountain to access the couloir from the top. Upside of that, we don't have to hike up the couloir. The downside of that is that we didn't know the conditions in it. We just approached from the top and hoped for the best. Now, as we were hiking up the backside, this is the scene that greeted us. We're looking at, looks like a whole lot of natural activity. We're seeing a whole lot of snow had already come off of the rocks here. This coupled with a hazard rating of low, 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 and a day that was cooler than the previous days made us feel really good and really confident about stability where we were going. It also made us feel like the skiing probably wasn't going to be that great. But we were in it, we were dedicated, and where we were at that point on the south side, the snow was softening up in the sun. Perfect. Let's go for it. Hiked up through this notch right here, broke out onto the glacier at the top, and then hiked across to get to the top of Super Couloir. This is what greeted us. So, if you take a look on this side, got our two skiers standing here, one skier in, you don't see any ski tracks. So that kind of tells you that this is super unbreakable, melt freeze crust. It wasn't going to be great skiing, but we were there. It looked like it was fine on the inside, and so we decided to go for it. This picture on the right is one that, I mean, the gift of hindsight isn't a superpower, but we all have it. Every time I look at this picture, I see little details, and I'm just kind of like, man, why the hell did we do that? Like, this is melt freeze. This sucks. This is ice. That sucks. The entire couloir is in shade, and it's a sunny day outside where the sun isn't getting in, which tells you that this isn't warming up. This probably isn't going to soften up. We were probably going to get 800 meters of just skiing melt freeze crust. We weren't paying attention to that. We were there to have fun. We had hiked all that way. We were dedicated, and we were pretty stoked about it, to be honest. We're just happy to be there. The thing that really kicks me when I look at this photo is this. That makes me pretty unhappy, actually, in hindsight, that we didn't really pay attention to this. And we'll get to that in a second here. Just to show you what the ski conditions are like, I don't have the volume on because the sound's awful, but I took this video. That's Kieran down at the bottom leading the way. That's Braden up there. And if you take a look at him, he's sliding. He's sliding. That's skiing, right? I think that's skiing. We could slide the whole way. As long as we're sliding the whole way, we skied it. That's awesome. What you don't hear is at the end of this video, Andrea says, still counts. I don't feel that way anymore after doing it. I don't think it counts at all. I think about this and I get nervous thinking about it. It took us 2 hours to descend this couloir. It's only 800 meters. That's slow. And it was worse than you think. We started off the descent at about 1:15, reasonable time. By the time we got to here, it was about 15 minutes later of good side slipping. No turns, just side slipping. And that's when I saw this slab. And I'm gonna call it the slab. If you picture, we're standing, we're regrouping in a wider part of the couloir, and I looked up, and what I saw above me was a 6-foot tall wall of snow. It was probably about 6 meters wide, and it was sitting on top of a black slab of rock, sloped at 45 degrees, leaning into the couloir, and there was free water running out from underneath the snowpack. And I saw that, and my stomach sank to my feet. And we were standing there, and I looked at my partners, and I said, like, we gotta go, and we gotta go now. And so we started side slipping as fast as we could. Going up wasn't really an option for us at this point, so we were side slipping like crazy. We were gonna do this. 10 minutes later, side slipping became absolutely impossible. We ended up getting on top of a bunch of refrozen avalanche debris that was knife hard. We were getting no ski penetration, and you can't call what we were doing skiing anymore. We were, with skis on our feet, stepping from one piece of avalanche debris to the other, and just trying desperately not to fall. This is when it really stopped being fun. We had this overhanging debris, and we couldn't move at any reasonable speed whatsoever. We were stuck, and we were in a slide for life condition as well. If one of us had slipped and fallen, that would have been it. It was bad, and I don't really think I processed how nasty that situation could have been until I looked back on it, as often happens in these cases. So, an hour and a half later, we're still sidestepping, my apologies. We get down to about this elevation, we're almost out of the bottom, and then I hear it. And that chunk of slab that I was looking at broke off. And I just heard it at first, just heard this thump, thump, thump. And I looked uphill, and a Volkswagen Beetle was rolling downhill towards us. And we're in a couloir. This place is a shooting gallery. And we're stuck on this refrozen chunder. We can't ski it. We're just there. We're just stuck. And I remember yelling at the other guys. I was on the right side of the couloir. They're on the left side of the couloir. And I just yelled at them, and we all looked up, and we all just stood there because we couldn't move, and we couldn't do anything else. And it was awful. The piece started ricocheting down, and it started sliding over to the left side of the couloir where my three friends were. And when it was about 50 feet over top of them, it hit one last time, and it exploded like a shotgun shell. And all of the pieces went ripping past, and all of them missed my friends. And I was so thankful, except for one. And one piece bounced off the ground, and it smoked my fiancée square in the chest. And thank goodness she's a kick-ass skier, because she managed to stay on her feet and knocked her about 1.5 meters downhill, and she managed to catch herself and stay upright. And she didn't even tell any of us that it happened. We didn't know it happened. We thought we all got away scot-clear, and she just kept it to herself. This was something I found out after. But after that chunk rolled past, we looked at each other and we said, we gotta go. So we just kept, sidestepping down this damn couloir. And we got out the bottom where the snow was soft, and we made the very first turn of the entire trip. We didn't ski that thing. We don't count it as skiing. We gotta go back. I look back at it and I consider ourselves to be so damn lucky. There was a bunch of signs that were pointing in front of us. The holes in the Swiss cheese lined up for us. And we managed to get away with it. And the big thing that we didn't consider was the effect that that sun would have on the slope above the couloir. Had we noticed that and had we thought about it, we probably would have walked away. There's common themes between these two avalanche scenarios. All of them have a springtime bend. First one, the weather forecast gave a false sense of security. We looked at the weather and we thought, we got it. But it wasn't the weather we should have been paying attention to, it was the sun, and the effect that the sun would have on the snow over top. To add on to that, in both cases we spent a lot of time with a lot of overhead hazard over top, just baking. That's not a good place to be in the springtime. There's significant variability in snow conditions on different aspects, and we were trying to extrapolate what was happening on one aspect and bring it over to the other. That wasn't a good idea. And then finally, these were both objective-driven missions. So this is something that we're just gonna do more in the springtime. The days are longer, it's more enjoyable. We wanna go places, we wanna go far. And as soon as we start bringing ourselves into an objective-driven mindset, we start to ignore the signs. And I think that's something that happened to us. We went far, we got there, we had a sunk cost going on, and we just continued to go for it because we were already there, and we ignored it. more common in the spring. So, how do you plan a trip in the spring with all of this in mind? One of the things that falls apart for us is that the preparation becomes a lot bigger because we stop getting less information. Those mins that Jeff was trying to get you guys to sign up for as much as possible, they start to go away because people have already stopped going to the mountains. They're all going mountain biking. Worst. Comparatively, over at Avalanche Canada, they also have less information to draw from because all of the operations are shutting down. So they eventually get to a point where they post this message. We've concluded our regularly updated forecast, but avalanche hazards can continue well into the spring. The spring conditions page offers guidance for mountain travel. That's all you're going to get from them. So you're going to have to put in more work for yourself. One of the things that you can start by doing is adopting a spring diurnal mindset. So at previous State of the Snowpacks, the previous forecasters have talked about mindsets and how we use them to guide how we go through our day. A spring diurnal mindset is one that understands that the hazard is going to be low in the morning and high in the afternoon because it's the heat of the day that's going to drive the hazard up. Secondly, Avalanche Canada gives us guidance on how to navigate spring conditions, and they identify 4. There's cold and snowy, there's all freeze, no melt, all melt, no freeze, and then a diurnal melt freeze cycle. Cold and snowy. This is one of the best ones. Winter is back. We've had that spring conditions, but it's got cold. We've had a big storm come through, and we're back to wintertime. This is awesome. Go skiing, slay some pow. Keep in mind that your deep winter condition or your deep winter problems, such as storm slab, wind slab, are going to come back and exist, so you have to keep that in mind. But also, the sun is still there, that strong spring forcing is still there, and it can snap back to that spring snowpack at any time. So you have to really be careful about the rapid changes this upper snowpack can go through, and you have to especially be careful because oftentimes that fresh snow is landing on a melt freeze crust from previous days, which will make it very easy to trigger. You have to watch for a hazard with the warming through the day. For the patrollers in the back, this is Barney riding his sled. I told him to send me a picture that said BRAP, and he sent me that. I'm pretty stoked about it. Secondly, all freeze, no melt. There's not enough warmth to melt the surface, and this comes from cold weather patterns and cloud cover during the day. And the triggering of avalanches is highly unlikely, though not impossible. There's a larger risk often in slide for life conditions. These are the type of conditions that are really good for fast travel. So it's the traverses, like what my friends were doing, and it's the distant objectives, like what we were trying to do. This photo is Eric Carter, who's one of our previous presenters, setting a blistering 8-hour and 23 FKT on the Tantalus Range Traverse. And he is rocking a skin suit. That guy's serious. Our third one is all melt, no freeze. This is going to occur with our very warm weather, continuous days of warm weather, and things like overhead cloud preventing radiative cooling during the nighttime. There's no chance for our snowpack to heal. And our loose, wet slab avalanches become far more likely, as well as cornice falls and triggering of far deeper, persistent layers. The skiing at this time is often sloppy and unenjoyable. It's not really that good time to go out anyways. It's a great day to stay in the valley when these conditions persist. And then finally, daily melt freeze. And this is kind of the holy grail of spring skiing. You get a daily freeze thaw cycle that creates a nice strong crust, and the surface melts as the day goes on. That crust greatly reduces the likelihood of any kind of triggering, though once again, not entirely eliminating it. And that surface crust melts into a nice layer of slush, turning it into spring corn. The only thing you have to, well, not the only thing, one of the things you have to be worried about with this is that total crust breakdown later in the day on the warmer days. And I couldn't think of anything that exemplifies spring skiing more than retro tele skiing with that hat on. Furthermore, for your planning, you gotta know the weather, and you gotta especially pay attention to the clouds. If you have a totally clear day, your skiing conditions are gonna be dominated mostly by the sun. If you have a cloudy day, your skiing conditions are gonna be dominated mostly by the air temperatures. So keep that in mind. If you go early and you avoid the heat, then you're gonna reduce your risk and you're gonna reduce your vulnerability for avalanches. The other thing you can do is leverage the aspect to your advantage. We know that the sun is always gonna rise in the east, it's always gonna set in the west, it's always gonna swing around the south. So you can plan your trip to follow the sun around, and you can get on a southwest facing slope a little later in the day, just as it's turning into corn, and you can nail some great skiing like that. The only thing you have to be careful of is that you don't hang out there too long, because just being out in the mountains late in the day, in late spring, it's just not really a great place to be anymore. And then of course, beware of the overhead hazard of the heat of the day. This doesn't just apply to solar aspects. Here on the coast, a lot of our cornices develop over polar aspects as well. So if you think you're on a north side out of the sun, it doesn't mean you're safe. Keep your eyes overhead for potential cornice fall. From a mental standpoint, prime yourself to early warning signs. That's one of the things that we didn't do on our trip, is we didn't pay attention to the potential early warning signs. And same with my friends on the Tantalus Range Traverse. Make sure that you prime yourself to pay attention to that stuff, because in the spring snowpack, things are going to flip really fast, and so you want to catch them if they start to turn on you. The other important thing is talk as a group about what you're seeing, and this just isn't a spring thing, this is an all-the-time thing. If you guys are always keeping the conversation up and you're talking about the things that you're skiing, hey, did you guys see that loose wet coming out of the rocks over there? We're making sure that everybody's on the same page and we can make those decisions together. I have a picture of my skis here because that sticker on the right side that says Huckum is actually a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Damn it. It stands for Hazard Unknowns, Collective Knowledge, and Established Mindset, or Exchanged Mindset. When I'm skiing and I'm trying to get somewhere fast and my head is down, and I see that sticker, it reminds me, I gotta talk to my partners. I gotta talk about what I'm seeing. We have to have a conversation, and we have to make sure that we're all on the same page throughout this entire trip. And then finally, you gotta know when to pull the plug and when to head home. This is probably the most important thing. You gotta know when you can be safe. You gotta know when it's just time to turn around and go back. And the springtime is the best time to turn around and go back. Because if it's the springtime and you're turning around, it's probably super hot. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna get back to camp, and you're gonna pull out your shovels, and you're gonna dig a table and a chair, and you're gonna throw out a bunch of cold ones, and you're just gonna sit in the sun and you're gonna enjoy it. And it's gonna be awesome. Because you always have tomorrow to go skiing again. That's it. Go ski something.
All right, thanks, Phil. Do we have any questions for Phil?
Wanted a follow-up.
A follow-up?
Is this about x-rays?
Okay, let's go.
How did you get so handsome, Phil?
Question, how did you get so handsome, Phil?
Plastic surgery.
And follow-up, did finding out that Andrea had a stronger chest than I tore, was that the reason you...
I don't know if for those of you live streaming right now, I'm not going to repeat that question.
Or have you already done so?
Okay. So I have to talk about what's happening here. The patrollers are just heckling me. That's it. They're just making fun of another patroller who broke his sternum in a car accident. It's kind of weird. It's fine. And Jimmy, no, that's not the reason. And to clarify, shortwave is not X-rays, and you need to clear that up there, buddy.
All right, let's see if we can potentially shift to a less personal question. And Matt at the back there. So the question is about the water and the case study.
Yeah, early warning signs. We talk about red flags a bunch. The two really big red flags for the springtime is going to be like rollerballing, so stuff heating up and just kind of snow just rolling downhill as balls, or we're looking at a really rapid, quick rise in temperature. Those are kind of the two that really exemplify it. And that rollerballing comes from the snow getting wet or heating up and moistening up. And you'll know that the snow is moistening up because you can make nice snowballs with it. So if the skiing's kind of feeling like it's going bad and you're able to make snowballs with it, that's a sign that that snow is heating up quickly. Does that get you there, Matt? Oh, entrainment, thank you. Matt works with me, he's needling me. When we start seeing snow entrainment, that's another sign as well. So we saw it with, I wonder if I can dial back super fast. This photo right here. There we go. We got there. So this is actually a great example of a point release that expands out into a larger avalanche in a wet snow, or for like a loose, wet environment. And this is an entraining process. So this avalanche here started up in the rocks where the rocks get superheated because they're not reflective, so they absorb all of the heat that comes from the sunshine. That snow starts to run, and then as it runs, all the wet snow below it just gets carried along with it, and it entrains and it grows. And that's kind of the thing that really exemplifies a loose, wet avalanche cycle when it's long running, is that it just kind of grows and flows like water as it goes downhill. Is that better? Awesome. Anybody else?
What are your thoughts, say, in the spring and later in the year or day when it's starting to cool off, say, Alton Go kind of time, and doing it then after solar heating?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was, what are my thoughts on kind of, sorry, we're just doing this for the live stream. Yeah, the question is, what are my thoughts on late day cooling in terms of a good time to go skiing? My thought would be, I'd be pretty hesitant for that to be something to be relied upon. Oftentimes the snowpack doesn't cool down as quickly as you want it to. And I was actually having a conversation with one of my coworkers yesterday about a trip that he did in the Rockies where the snowpack started going moist and completely isothermal at about, I think he was saying about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And it was a very loose snowpack. So as soon as it got warm and isothermal, even with skis on, they were sinking up to their waists in snow. And so they were getting stuck under things. And that snowpack didn't start to heal because it was so warm out. It didn't start to heal until about 1 or 2 in the morning. So they ended up taking shelter at the bottom of the valley and just waiting till that time. And that's the only time that it started warming up. So it is a possibility on a cooler day, but you'd really have to like check the conditions as you're going up. And I would say that's not really, yeah, exactly. No one? Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right, Phil Bonham, thank you very much. All right, so we had a couple of good questions. You had one earlier. On behalf of Evo, here's a free ski tune for you. And for this guy over here, you had a reasonable question for you. Just the source, we expect it. All right, there's on behalf of Evo, there's a free ski tune for you. Gwen Millie's gonna come up here now and we're gonna do the raffle and give out a whole bunch of these prizes. Anybody have any questions for me while I'm waiting for Gwen to get all the stuff? Anything? No? All right, once again, we really wanna thank you for being here. It's been a really great season. This will be the last State of the Snowpack Whistler presentation. I do expect we'll be back up for next year. And of course, it'll be even better.